It just seems so futile. You know? All these women and nothing.
Once upon a time, before streaming cues and autoplay, your week revolved around a TV schedule, not an algorithm, not a recommendation feed, a printed grid in the newspaper, and a network programmer deciding exactly what you'd be doing on Thursday at 8 p.m. And behind those grids, especially at CBS and NBC, there were egos, rivalries, revenge moves, and the occasional act of pure pettiness. These weren't just lineups. They were battle plans. For decades, CBS and NBC treated prime time like contested territory. You didn't just put a show on a night. You planted a flag. You guarded your night. You tried to steal your rival's audience by stacking your biggest guns against theirs. And if that meant sacrificing a veteran show, bruising a star's ego, or looking just a little bit ruthless, well, that was war. In this video, we're counting down 8 times those scheduling decisions felt less like business, and more like they got personal. From tossing beloved hits into a ratings buzzsaw, to counter-programming that seemed designed just to humiliate the other network. These are the nights when CBS versus NBC spilled out of the spreadsheet and into the headlines. We'll look at Bonanza's early dominance, the Cosby Crunch, ER versus Chicago Hope, Murder, She Wrote getting thrown to the wolves, Survivor storming NBC's Precious Thursday, and the night CBS finally cracked the must-see TV fortress. If you remember arguing over which show to watch live and which one to tape on the VCR, you're in the right place. Before we jump into number 8, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our trips back into TV's glory days. And let us know in the comments, were you Team CBS or Team NBC? 8. Sunday Night Showdown, Bonanza versus CBS's younger upstarts. We're kicking things off on Sunday night, when NBC's Bonanza turned from a hit western into a full-blown ratings bully. By the late 1960s, Bonanza was an absolute monster. NBC moved it to Sundays at 9 p.m., and American families built their evenings around the Cartwrights. Dinner, dishes, then everyone on the couch for another hour at the Ponderosa. For NBC, it was perfect. A wholesome, all-ages anchor that dominated the night and set up the shows around it. CBS, on the other hand, kept running into the Bonanza wall. You didn't just schedule a show against it. You scheduled a sacrificial lamb. But CBS wasn't content to just roll over. They started countering with edgier, more youth-leaning options like the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, trying to peel off younger viewers who were maybe a little bored with family westerns and a lot more interested in comedy, music, and political satire. This is where things started to feel less like we're just filling a time slot, and more like we're not letting you own this night. NBC was saying, we control America's Sunday families. CBS was saying, oh yeah, we're going to chip away at you with something loud, controversial, and modern. Behind the scenes, executives on both sides watched the weekly ratings like box scores from a playoff series. Did the Smothers Brothers grab enough viewers to dent Bonanza? Did Bonanza still steamroll everything in sight? Every Sunday night felt like a fresh skirmish in a longer war. What made it personal was that both networks were essentially arguing over who got to define the American Sunday night. NBC wanted it comforting and traditional. CBS wanted it younger and more provocative. And every time CBS took even a little slice of that Bonanza audience, it was like stealing a piece of NBC's identity. Sunday nights were no longer just about what was on. They were about who owned the living room. 7. The Cosby Crunch, Magnum PI versus NBC's Thursday juggernaut. By the early 1980s, Thursday nights were where CBS went to flex. One of their crown jewels, Magnum PI, Tom Selleck, the mustache, the Ferrari, the whole Hawaiian detective wish fulfillment package. It was a reliable hit, and CBS liked its chances. Then NBC unleashed The Cosby Show. Overnight, Thursday went from competitive to brutal. NBC built what would become one of TV's most famous blocks. The Cosby Show, Family Ties, eventually Cheers and more. It wasn't just a good lineup, it was an empire. Viewers stopped channel surfing and just left NBC on all night. If you were scheduled against that, you weren't a competitor, you were a target. Magnum, PI, suddenly found itself in the crosshairs. Viewers who had faithfully followed Thomas Magnum's cases were now being pulled into the Huxtable living room instead. Critics started talking about the Cosby Crunch, a ratings phenomenon where NBC's Thursday lineup didn't just win, it flattened anything in its path. For CBS, it stung. Magnum was a proven hit, a show that had earned its place in prime time, and now it was getting hammered by this new NBC juggernaut. It wasn't long before CBS quietly started moving Magnum to a different night, trying to save the show from being permanently associated with losing to Cosby. Inside NBC, this wasn't just smart scheduling, it was a statement. After years of chasing CBS, they were now the ones dictating where the competition dared to place their shows. And in the halls of CBS, there were definitely some bruised egos as programmers watched their Thursday prize get outgunned and shoved aside. The Cosby Crunch wasn't just about a high-rated sitcom. It was the moment NBC proved it could make CBS blink. And for a lot of people in the industry, it felt like a changing of the guard, delivered with a smirk. 6. All these MDs in one time slot. ER versus Chicago Hope. Jump ahead to fall 1994, and the battlefield moved to the hospital. Both networks had the same idea at the same time, a glossy, high-stakes medical drama set in Chicago. NBC rolled out ER, a fast-paced, adrenaline-fueled emergency room series with a young George Clooney and a documentary-style intensity. CBS countered with Chicago Hope, a more traditional, prestige-leaning drama from respected producer David E. Kelley, set in a high-end surgical hospital. And then came the decision that made everyone's eyebrows shoot up. Both shows would premiere head-to-head on Thursday at 10 p.m. Critics joked about all these MDs in one time slot, but it was more than just a clever line. This was a direct duel. NBC versus CBS, ER versus Chicago Hope. Same city, same genre, same night. For CBS and NBC executives, this wasn't just programming. It was a showdown with bragging rights attached. Conventional wisdom said CBS had the edge. Chicago Hope had the prestige, the producer pedigree, and a cast of heavy hitters. ER was the scrappier underdog, with an ensemble cast and a more kinetic style. Then the ratings came in. ER didn't just win, it crushed Chicago Hope. Viewers got hooked on the frantic pace, the handheld cameras, and the sense that anything could happen in that emergency room. Chicago Hope, meanwhile, struggled to stand out, and its numbers lagged behind. Suddenly, the supposed underdog became NBC's next big classic, and CBS was the one scrambling. It wasn't long before CBS folded and moved Chicago Hope to a different night, an admission that their prestige gamble had been beaten by NBC's adrenaline shot. For the people behind Chicago Hope, it had to sting. They weren't just losing to a rival show, they were losing to a rival network that had dared them to step into the same ring, and then knocked them down, in public, every Thursday night. In the annals of scheduling wars, this one felt like two networks putting their best doctors in the same surgical theater, and only one walking out with a pulse. 5. Unsportsmanlike conduct. ER vs. Chicago Hope. Again, you'd think after losing the Thursday duel, CBS would quietly regroup. Instead, they tried to salvage their pride, and Chicago Hope, with a strategic retreat. CBS moved Chicago Hope to Monday nights at 10 p.m., hoping that away from ER's shadow, it could breathe, find an audience, and prove it deserved to survive. It was a sensible move. Let the shows coexist in different slots and give viewers two strong hospital dramas on different nights. NBC, however, wasn't about to let it go that easily. On the very night Chicago Hope debuted in its new Monday time slot, NBC made a move that felt less like strategy and more like a taunt. They re-aired the ER pilot opposite it. Not a random rerun, not a filler movie, specifically the ER episode that had launched their own medical juggernaut. To some viewers, it was just a fun chance to catch ER from the beginning. To people inside CBS and the Chicago Hope cast, it felt like NBC was rubbing salt in the wound. Actor Mandy Patinkin, one of Chicago Hope's stars, famously called this unsportsmanlike. That's not a word you hear often in TV scheduling. It's what you say when you feel like the other side isn't just competing. They're trying to humiliate you. And you could see his point. NBC already had the bigger hit. They'd already won the Thursday face-off. But by deliberately rerunning the ER pilot against Chicago Hope's Fresh Start night, they turned that time slot into a victory lap. For CBS executives, this had to feel like getting dunked on twice. First in the ratings, then in the rematch they never asked for. The message from NBC was clear. You move, we follow. You try to rebuild, we'll remind viewers who did it first, and better. Chicago Hope carried on for a bit, but the psychological damage was done. This wasn't just scheduling anymore. It was a grudge. 4. Throwing Jessica into the buzzsaw. Murder, She Wrote versus Friends. If you want a moment where scheduling felt brutal, this is it. For over a decade, Murder, She Wrote was a cozy Sunday night tradition on CBS. Angela Lansbury's Jessica Fletcher solved crimes while viewers relaxed at the end of the weekend. It pulled strong ratings, skewed older, and felt like one of those shows that might quietly run forever. Then came the mid-1990s, and CBS decided it was tired of NBC's stranglehold on Thursday nights. NBC's Friends was exploding in popularity, anchoring the must-see TV lineup with a young, loyal audience. CBS looked at that and said, "We want a piece of Thursday." And in one of the coldest moves in the scheduling wars, they took Murder, She Wrote off its comfortable Sunday perch, and dropped it into Thursday at 8 p.m., right in front of Friends. On paper, you can imagine the logic. Take a known hit and use it to fight for a bigger night. In reality, it was like walking a beloved veteran into a firing squad. The core audiences didn't overlap. Friends captured younger viewers and the hangout vibe of the 90s. Murder, She Wrote appealed to older viewers and families used to Sunday rituals. The move confused its base and did nothing to seriously dent NBC's Thursday empire. Angela Lansbury was not happy. She openly talked about being shattered and disappointed by the decision. After years of carrying that slot, she felt like the show and its audience had been treated as expendable in a desperate ratings stunt. The result? Ratings dropped, the magic was gone, and the show was canceled soon after. For fans, it felt like CBS had sacrificed Jessica Fletcher on the altar of Thursday night bragging rights, and lost anyway. This wasn't just a bad programming call. It felt personal, a betrayal of a loyal show, its star, and the viewers who had spent Sunday nights in Cabot Cove for more than a decade. 3. Building the Fortress. Must-see TV versus CBS's counter-programming. To really understand how personal things got, you have to look at the bigger picture. NBC's long campaign to turn Thursday night into an impregnable fortress, and CBS's long, frustrating effort to tear it down. Starting in the 1980s, NBC stacked hit after hit on Thursday. Cheers, Family Ties, The Cosby Show, later joined by Seinfeld, Friends, and ER. It became more than a lineup. It was a brand. Must-see TV. Viewers didn't ask, "What's on at 8?" They asked, "What's NBC showing tonight?" That kind of dominance doesn't just hurt your rivals' ratings. It hurts their pride. CBS's response was a mix of creativity and desperation. They tried everything. Family comedies aimed at older viewers. Female-driven shows meant to peel off women from NBC's sitcoms. Even more serious dramas hoping to lure those who weren't into laughing their way through Thursday. But time after time, their shows ran into the same brick wall, the NBC Fortress. Some promising series died quietly on Thursday nights, never really standing a chance against the combined weight of Friends and ER. Others got yanked and moved to safer nights, hoping to survive outside the battlefield. Inside NBC, there was a real sense of swagger. Thursday was theirs. Programmers talked openly about defending it, about making it so risky for other networks to challenge them that they would simply give up. And at CBS, programmers had to look at a ratings chart every Friday morning that screamed, "You lost Thursday, again." This is where the scheduling wars stopped being theoretical and became a matter of identity. NBC was the cool kid with the must-watch night. CBS was the scrappy challenger, always trying to find the perfect show to break the spell. Every new CBS series slotted against must-see TV came with stakes beyond survival. If it worked, it meant CBS was finally cracking the fortress. If it didn't, it was one more painful reminder that NBC still owned the night and wasn't afraid to defend it. 2. Survivor storms the beach. CBS takes on Friends, head on. For years, it seemed like nobody could touch NBC's Friends on Thursday at 8 p.m. Then, in the early 2000s, CBS decided it was done playing defense. Enter Survivor. After its breakout first season, Survivor was a phenomenon. Water cooler show, front page headlines, everyone arguing about alliances and backstabbing. CBS looked at this new reality titan and thought, what if we use this as a battering ram against NBC? So they did something bold. They moved Survivor, the Australian outback, to Thursday at 8 p.m., putting it squarely up against Friends, the jewel of must-see TV. It was like announcing, we're coming for your crown, and we're not doing it with a sacrificial lamb. We're bringing our biggest hit. NBC didn't take that lightly. They launched what the press dubbed an anti-Survivor strategy. Friends ran slightly longer, around 40 minutes, to overlap more of Survivor's hour. NBC added a short Saturday night live-style special to keep viewers from flipping. It was aggressively defensive programming, designed to block Survivor from gaining a foothold. For viewers, it created a genuine dilemma. Do you stick with the familiar Friends in Central Perk? Or do you flip over to the island to see who gets voted off this week? For CBS and NBC execs, it was war by remote control. And then the unthinkable happened. Survivor actually beat Friends in total viewers some weeks. NBC still won with younger demographics, but the very idea that CBS could knock Friends around in any metric was a huge psychological blow. This wasn't just another ratings battle. It was CBS marching right up to the front door of must-see TV and pounding on it with a reality sledgehammer. For NBC, it meant having to admit that Thursday wasn't untouchable anymore. For CBS, it was validation after years of failure. They finally had a weapon that could make NBC sweat. The island had stormed the castle, and for the first time in a long time, CBS could look at Thursday night and say, we belong here. 1. The night CBS finally cracked. Thursday, CSI and the end of an era. If Survivor was the shock to the system, CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, was the long game that changed everything. By the early 2000s, CBS had figured out something crucial. You don't have to beat NBC at being NBC. You can win by doing something different, and doing it so well that viewers build new habits around you. CSI was that something. Sleek, stylized, and darker than the typical network drama, CSI followed forensic investigators turning tiny pieces of evidence into murder cases solved. It had flashy visuals, clever twists, and a cool factor CBS hadn't always been known for. When CBS started using CSI as a Thursday anchor, paired with Survivor or other strong shows, it began to chip away at NBC's decades-long dominance. Slowly, the unthinkable happened. CBS overtook NBC in key ratings races and overall perception. Thursday night was no longer automatically must-see TV. It was a place where CBS could hold its own, or even win. NBC, once the swaggering champion, found itself wrestling with weaker sitcom launches and a fading ER. For the creative teams that built NBC's Thursday empire, this had to feel deeply personal. They'd spent years turning that night into a cultural institution. Now, here came CBS with a crime lab and a reality show, quietly rewriting the rules of what a hit could look like in the 21st century. On paper, this is just the story of shifting ratings and changing tastes. But behind closed doors, it represented the emotional end of an era. The programmers who once bragged about owning Thursday had to watch their fortress crumble. Not in one dramatic collapse, but brick by brick over several seasons. For CBS, the night CSI took firm hold. On Thursday wasn't just a scheduling victory. It was payback for all the Sunday nights overshadowed by Bonanza, all the Thursday flops, all the sacrificial lambs thrown at must-see TV. It was the moment the long war swung in their favor. And for NBC, it was a reminder that even the mightiest time slot has an expiration date. Conclusion. Looking back, it's almost funny how much drama could be packed into a simple TV schedule grid. A few columns, some time slots, and behind every one of those choices, a story. At CBS and NBC, scheduling wasn't just logistics. It was politics. It was pride. It was personal. We saw Bonanza turn Sunday into NBC's family stronghold, and CBS trying to chip away with younger, sharper fare. We watched Magnum PI get flattened by the Cosby Crunch as NBC transformed Thursday into their personal playground. We witnessed the hospital wars of ER vs. Chicago Hope, where a head-to-head fight turned into an ongoing grudge match, complete with unsportsmanlike accusations. We watched CBS throw murder she wrote into the jaws of friends, sacrificing a beloved veteran in a desperate grab for Thursday relevance, only to watch it backfire. We zoomed out to see how must-see TV became less a lineup and more a taunt to every rival programmer in town. And then, finally, we saw CBS punch back with Survivor and CSI, proving that even the most dominant night on television could be cracked open. Today, the idea of stressing over which show to watch live and which to tape on VHS feels ancient. Streaming, DVRs, and on-demand everything have turned scheduling from a battlefield into a suggestion. But that's exactly what makes these old network wars so fascinating. For a few decades, what show aired on which network, on which night, could change careers, end institutions, and spark genuine resentment between suits and skyscrapers. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these programming battles do you remember living through? Were you a loyal NBC must-see TV watcher, or did you stick by CBS even when it was outgunned? Drop your memories in the comments. Hit like if this stirred up a little TV nostalgia, and make sure you subscribe to Throwback Network for more deep dives into the stories behind the shows.